Okay, today's Vblog, I guess is January 11th, which is probably above the date if I remember credit cards, resets, and all that fun stuff. But it's January 11th. Um, I guess it's good credit month. I don't know. I got to do my taxes, but a lot of the stuff is delayed, so I'm not really pushing it yet. I might start working on the expenses. That was last mall meet. That was kind of fun. I got something neat out of it from an artist, 1122. I think there's a December one, but I missed that one. I got there late. I should have got there early. I could have gotten part of the group photos. There's a next small meet, but it's debatable to be there, and I kind of would rather just be my fuzzy self. I got some friends invited me to Super Bowl party, so it's probably a good relaxing weekend with some food and friends. But my hands are a little bit, I don't know, my nerves are still shot, and I don't think it'll ever get better. But it could be because of coffee, it could be because of stress. Nerves do grow back for the most part, but the sheathing is what fails, and that's what allows transmission of neural communication. So things are going to be stuck up here more than anywhere else. My ears apparently healed back up, so that's good. But my hands are still a little bit not jittery. I could just sit down and just take a nap now. Most of my tinnitus has died off. I can still hear it, but it's not as loud. I am noticing that stuff I used to remember hearing across the hall from this office, I don't barely hear. I hear it echoing, which was super loud. Now it's not. So that average 10 dB loss is a lot of energy lost. So I'm debating even doing any festivals this summer because it's so loud. And even though I bring earplugs with me, like I was at the bar last night, I earplugged and then went back downstairs and unearplugged so I can listen to my headset. And I noticed the volume up, even with the volume up, I could barely hear my headset. I used to remember it was blistering loud when it's at the top side. And maybe they did something in the software to limit the loudness. I'm pretty sure they did a few years back because people talked about it. But whether that's damaging loudness or not, if I've already lost half the audio coming in, turning it up loud is the only way I could hear in a loud room. So it's gotten to the point where I'm like, but at least the bar was fun. I met a bunch of people. They, of course, they look at the history as usual. But then again, I'm staying in fucking illegals infested LA, so there's not really much I can do. Anyhow, nice squeaks here, and I'm going to take a few second break and I'm going to go and unbox a new item from a new maker, Wild Creations, so that'll be fun. Okay, so recording, there we go. It's trying not to knock over my coffee on the table, but I believe I ordered a new tail from a new maker. Sad story is I have the whole documentation, the original tail, and he's not wrong about finding the materials, but surprisingly, we're not. But he's from Dubai, which I thought it was from UK from his name, but Dubai has a lot of talking, and I'm pretty sure he used a lot of AI to talk with me because it's really hard to talk to someone at this level. So when you know what you want, I mean, I've got sharp objects. This guy here is poking my face, but hate to destroy a perfectly good toy, even though it is getting old, just withering away at the office. Things oxidize faster. I mean, it used to be when you had a toy, it's like it's the newest thing in your life, and the honeymoon lasts at least a month, and then it just seems forever. Now it's like, well, that's fun. You're stuffing a shredded paper. You could have at least made something easier to throw away. Because shredded paper, I mean, I had one maker that was new that cleared the Reiki plush. Did the same too, but didn't sell in the large markets as well. So I guess if furries are just supporters, then I don't support California for the same reason. Everything I do, I try to either split cost, whatever you can, make sure it's not off of my bill tab. Oh, dang it. I'm going to have to pause this again because I have to get a bigger trash can. Okay, new game plan. Instead of actually taking the stuff out of the box the way that I anticipated, so this maker apparently used, I hate to say it, it's called the monkey method because the tail's attached to the base like this instead of attached straight down at an angle. That's one of the downsides. This is the devil one, so let's see what it looks like. It's like they all wrap it really well, and it's packed really well, don't get me wrong. I try to reuse as much as I can. Um, Sorry about that. I upped the ante with the bug zapper here in the room because the girls outside of this office, they all have to have green plants, just like my house smells like manure because my family's using that. Because California's clay. Don't get me wrong, California is not designed for growth. It's designed for industry. Well, that type of growth, but not green. If you want to live in a rainforest, go to Florida. If you want free water, go to Florida. If you want solar power to actually make a difference, go to Florida. So California is definitely not the state for this. It's the worst state I've ever seen to do anything. It's not just mismanagement. The only thing people could say, it has perfect weather. And you know what? I'm tired of this perfect weather. If anything, like Elon could be monitoring and watching this feed, you should actually terraform Mars and prove to the world we can recreate California weather and other environments, biohacking. So, but I know Florida doesn't want to do any of that seeding stuff, which I can't believe it because maybe that's what's causing the storm, cloud control, and all the other fun stuff. So there's one tail here, and just make this life easier, we're going to take both tails out. Here's the one that's the Drake tail, which has lots and lots. God. Once again, I'll say, don't ever use shredded paper. If you're going to use shredded paper, it's almost the same thing as the Great Stuff foam. It does have that new smell to it. Yeah, it does. Fabric smell, whatever it is. Like I said, I'm not terribly into, this is probably going to be the last tail project. God, this thing is heavy. So I'll have to pull it out and unwrap it. What did he leave me with? He leave me with a shirt. Wild Creations. It's very wild. He's a cool guy, though. Cool guy. Not too many people willing to work with me anymore, so this just puts it in perspective that I might go to a different parts of the world, and since Drake Toys is kind of failing, I still get a few orders here and there. I will probably be doing one more commercial run, but I'm going to try changing the color design a bit. So I've got asked to do other color designs, and you know what? Purple and black is the best, but purple and white might sound cool, and I did clear, which kind of shows that the mouth art is actually still there. But when it comes to things like these type of toys, they don't last forever. They're about as much as the fursuit, but in packaging and stuff, they may actually last longer than we expected. So I've seen some stuff from the 1970s and 80s. So, oh, thanks for supporting Wild Creation. Handcrafted with care. Well, you are part of that world where Ferraris are just left on the road. So I'm glad to do business with you because at least you got the work done. May not been, and I'll pause this video in a second and get rid of this box and see if I can unwrap this superly, overly wrapped, overly done, and put it on a different box so I could take it home. And the shirt's cool, actually. I kind of like that artwork. Maybe you could do something here, Drake Toys, but I'm at the point where it's like, being a promoter is not my thing, but I will get in a fuzzy animal suit just because it's cool. And it's fun to be something else and take a vacation from life. But other than that, yeah, so this is kind of cool. And this is probably going to be the very last project. I have a few cues, but I'm thinking of just dumping them because the cost and time, I've been waiting for years. And some of these are good makers. Don't get me wrong. They do put a lot of work in the creation. And they get pretty close to 90%. They may have their own style to do something that doesn't equate to us engineers to build something durable. So when I pause this video in about 2 seconds here, I will definitely do a breakdown of the design because I've seen many designs and I've seen so many things. So, and yeah, that is respectful, but at the same time, the new kids are open to creativity, and I just watched a little bit of E3 or whatever, that expo, and I am blown away with the new speculative processing since computer science was my major up until 2012, where I got into electronic hardware communication and got into a trade, and then had to pay every single penny of all of my loans back. So if I didn't have to, I would have been able to throw parties and even buy a house by now. But the middle class keeps getting screwed, so I'm going to walk myself away from that and learn about trades and things like that and build equity, and not the California equity, because California, you have to speak Spanish to get a job anywhere here. Anyhow, I'm going to pose a quick stop because I do have a few people that I do want to sometimes credit, and one is Serge Sparks. He's cool because he moved back to California. He's not so cool anymore, but he did learn it's a lot harder to create things than it really is, which is why I give artists and engineers that they do create wealth, because they tend to solve a problem and sometimes beating around the bush enough times. What I will not credit is those hombres that keep putting in, they get the job done, but 2 years later to 2 weeks later, our sensors break again. And I says, well, why can't you guys come up with a solution? I gave them saying, hey, look, use proximity sensor. Disney use it on their rides. It solves the electromechanical problem. If you're a ride technician, you fix the stuff, but you communicate with engineers to try to make something better for the lifetime of the product or service. Yes, trying to buy a ride for Disney is not something that's going to cost you a few million. It's going to cost you up there in the 6 figures to 7 figures. So doing something as simple as this, like a tail that's supposedly engineered to be everyday use, I gotta take it out. I meant to take it out yesterday and do a review of it, because it would have made more sense to debut it at the last fur meet. But I've been using my last year's tail, and that was my new tail made by another guy, and it was pretty good. The Velcro stays on. The only downside is the Velcro catches with the fabric. So, not to criticize, at least the spikes were actually made with silicone rubber, and many makers don't like to make that because they use silicone molds and they bond to each other. Rather than actually solving the problem, they just complain, bitch and moan, bitch and moan, and bitch and moan. Okay, fine. You're charging 3 times as much as like $500 per tail, when I remember $200 was a lot of money for making a tail just 7 years ago. So you're not going to put any effort into it, then why am I selling computer parts for pennies on a dollar and barely making pocket change, but at least getting a good review? And one guy complained, like, what type of memory chips you got in those DDR3 collections? So I finally listed it out, and I saw there are a few 4 gigs of RAM. Okay, I'm not dropping this below 20 bucks anymore. So I jacked up the price a little bit more, and he goes, oh my God, you're at $50. I says, you know what RAM is in there? It's no longer a grab bag. If it's a grab bag, it's your chances to get something for less. But if you want to be picky about stuff, then you better pay the extra fee. And because this is the last time I'm paying an extra fee to be picky, I don't even know where I'm going to go, because the last maker, his products is around $5,000 to $10,000. Okay, it takes about 6 months to a year to complete his project, so it's a little bit in that range. But if you compare that to a project that I was in queue since 2022, that's 4 years ago, which means that he's not really that interested to take on my $2,000 project. So either I should take that money back and buy gold or silver or something that holds value, because it's just not worth it anymore. And I'm almost at the point that even making little Drake toys, it's fun, but my next rollout of maybe $5,000 to do a production with China and try to get it shipped over here, and I have to do the logistics, it's not worth it anymore. It's worth focusing on Orbit and expanding, but they seem to be cutting off the expansion because they realize that IT is very expensive. And it is, because the new milestones and change in technology is daily. It's like every week you hear a new breakthrough, and if you're not keeping up with the latest breakthrough, then you're the same group of people complaining AI is replacing their job. I've heard this story with automation, computers, the Ford line. So yeah, this is nothing new to me. So anyhow, I'm going to take a little pause, rant one, and we'll continue for a 5-minute when I unwrap the other stuff. Okay, the last 30 seconds and figuring out how to take out the bubble wrap. First off, if you have to bubble wrap your product to send it to me, then it probably shouldn't be worn as a furry paraphernalia, because most of us, we want something to last. Now, this is another reason why I'm actually having a cow with a lot of this stuff because you put so much job into packing it, and I understand that. Maybe you should go work for my shipping department because we have a lot of glass products, and the non-English speaking people tend to just break more stuff than it's worth, so and leave it out to pasture, but they don't care because it ain't their property, and that's pretty much why I don't really deal with that anymore. So the drake tail, which is being opened up finally after a few days here at the office. Okay, so we got that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all this stuff in a pile, be like an average Joe person. I've got an X-Acto knife, which is great for cutting things and popping pool toys, oddly enough, even though they have no chance against something that sharp. But those of us who've been a creative artist in the past knew that things like X-Acto knife are a great tool, an inexpensive tool, because when you grew up in Florida, getting an A in a college degree means you better get straight A's, and doesn't guarantee a job, but guarantees you keep the job the longest. I know a few fur friends who've given up furry recently because they're so PC, politically correct, that to the point where we just can't have fun creating things like this. Now, I'm kind of excited because the guy who made it did send me some pictures, but didn't want to send me the other pictures because I tend to criticize. And he did compliment that because I am an engineer, and when you're an engineer, you see things. Now, I see mechanics the same way, why they don't like fixing new cars, but if they want to stay in business, they've got to at least tailor to the person who has the checkbook. So that answers, unless you have saved up your money, and thank God he finally invested into a house in the last 5 years. The downside, he's only paying the minimum balance. He might have to have someone look over his finances and his liabilities and to see what is true equity, not the California equity. And when you do that, you don't really depend on people. And another plug for Myrtle Monsters, because I just saw them, their post, and it made me laugh. They have a cute green, what do you call it, a little blue and green sea dragon. I so want. She wants $1,200 for it, and I can't blame her because that might be the stepping stone to keeping her going to these cons, because she's at FC next weekend, and as much as I'm finally getting invites to go to these cons rather than people just blacklisting me, I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. Don't need you guys. Because you don't want me at a con, that's fine. I mean, con has security, and I work with security. I don't make a scene or anything like that. I just simply deal with that. Accidents happen, I understand. I don't do things on purpose. Even when we had free-for-all, the beauty was we said, if you want to protest, we've got cops waiting outside. I worked with security staff and communications to them, and nothing bad happened. I mean, the whole news made a big deal. It was just a bunch of people. A lot of people didn't show up. And the no-shows, we didn't have no-show insurance. That's what invented this new thing that insurance company is that they can pay out because of a con that gets canceled or a no-show. So someone will pay a little extra, like $5 to have the no-show insurance. It's a joke at the end of the day, but if you talk to the right people and you spent like a couple of $100s to get in and all this stuff, I could imagine getting that back, because insurance do cover something like that. Because you do take a chance when you go to a con, whether you pay for sponsorship or any of the other packages, so, or an event. But the no-show, and when you do run an event, unless you run a private event with like 10 people or less, more than likely you're not going to need this thing called insurance. But as you grow bigger, like 20 plus, without insurance, hotels and places like that are going to look at you funny. I mean, the best they can say is no, because you now have more liabilities with them. So this maker, with the absolute smell of the molding, which I really don't know what he used to make the molding, which was kind of weird. Only one spike in the tip of the tail, so it's probably not the best design. But seeing the fact that it has a really strong molding smell to it, I'm really not liking what he did. So, okay, so he did do the little things underneath it, but yeah, this is kind of one of the reasons why I'm kind of not, like, the good artists don't want to work with me. That's fine, you just lost your big customer. The not so good artists that are starting is working with me, which is kind of cool that they're trying their craft and skill and problem solving. It does have a zipper, so I might try. Feels like this thing is still slimy, so I'm trying to find out what material he used. This feels like rubber. If he made it molded rubber, I'm really not a big fan of that stuff because um, the reason being is this toy has a plasticizer on it, and I know Jets has actually made. I like a lot of these guys. I mean, they do break and burst pretty easily, so they're not leather balancing, but they are very good decorative products. And from all the ones I've seen, has seeping, which is your vinyl smell. This is actually having somewhat of that smell, so I'm beginning to wonder if the material he used underneath. He has a zipper here, and he told me about it in the video, so I'm willing to mess with it. Maybe I'll make something of it. Who knows? It might end up back on eBay as an interesting toy. As far as the zipper goes, okay, so if I wanted to get inside, I can, but it's not. Okay, so it's made with foam. And as I said before, whenever you mold foam on these things, I just replaced the foam on my Drake chair last fall, and even though these foam is the easiest to work with, they will disintegrate after about 2 or 3 years. And because of the rubbery material he used here, 9 out of 10 chances, that's like putting this next to my toy and this toy melts because of the plasticizers. They tend to mix and match a lot. Now the good news is we're not using Bakelite, which is now turned to be radioactive by some group of people. But this is pretty much where it. Okay, so he did make a zipper here. And you know what? Just for fun, I am going to try to illuminate this guy because I'm an electrical engineer. So getting stuff not to burst into flames unless I want them to is kind of a skill set. But the zipper does unzip. And he uses giant zippers, which you didn't have to use. You can use invisible zippers. It looks a lot better, I think. So, but seeing the fact that it was molded spikes and everything, I'm like, it didn't come out as much as because a lot of the stuff requires a lot of engineering for the design. This is why I need to just get my own shop and just start fixing it. I just don't have the space, honestly. And if I get more into ghost hunting, this is going to be a thing of the past because I love wearing this stuff. And this might be a good tail to wear ghost hunting because it looks so dirty as it is. But as far as I know, this stuff now is costing me $500 for the labor, so it's just not worth it anymore. At $500, I might as well get a new set of tires for my car, see, and a new car with the deal because at least I could move around town and move my stuff around. But being like my whitey friends, we like our cute stuff in the back and things like that. So there's tail one. Tail two, let me do a pause and do tail two in a second. Okay, so this one is wrapped up the same way, and either this person, at least this person is a maker, which is cool. Being a maker means you get to create stuff, but whether you create or destroy more stuff, because I was never truly a maker by most people's standards. Crazy Joe is a maker, but people don't like his politics. And apparently, I guess because I'm in his fandom range, I'm basically at point blank range for the same reason. So, but reality speaks is action speaks louder than words, right? So they made a nice diamond tip, which I'm actually impressed with that. This might actually be a tail worth actually wearing around. The other tail is worth wearing, but I probably wouldn't wear it at Vegas because of the smokiness of Vegas. Not saying it's a bad thing because I grew up with smoking uncles and smoking guns and all sorts of other fun stuff as well. So again, they wrapped it the same way. And now that I see that they wrap it with paper towels, the only thing I can think of is that it's using the same molded material that he used earlier, which I will say it's a great starting point, but it's not the best point for durability. Maybe if I let it sit on the shelf here for about 2 or 3 days, like most of my vinyl material, that the softener will seep out. And it does work because I have seen some of my rubber stuff after about a year now of ownership. They haven't turned yellow. They usually do after a year or so, which I actually don't really care, honestly, because claws turn yellow. So, but yeah, after all this heavy packing, which is crazy because you have a tail that's designed, and it does weigh a good amount, so. And it has that new fabric smell, which is always cool, I think. And then sometimes you get so accustomed to it. It's not super strong because after my last year's accident, possibly RSV infection or something that happened around the same time knocked my nerves out. The scent is not as strong because even things like rubber, latex, some people love it. I actually don't like latex scent. But I've had a latex tail, and now that company doesn't even want to make any custom tails for me because they used to offer for me a lot of crazy stuff back in 2019 and 20. But I said, nah, I'm not going to do anything because I'm being hosed with twice the amount of taxes, and I see more hombres on the streets, bad hombres. So that doesn't help either. Like you got something cool, just means that you're now a target for theft. See, Orbit's been updating here a lot of their gear, so we have the latest camera tech and all the other stuff. And whenever I parked, I can tell that I've never had a break-in when I'm here. I've only had a break-in before I got here, and I don't even know if it's a break-in because we have coworkers. It's probably an inside job because we have coworkers that refuse to deactivate the alarm. We have 4 keypads all over this complex. They always pick the door that has no keypad. So at one point in time, we kept putting new keypads in and moving stuff around. They always pick the door on the other side. And see, the reason why they do that is because they are simply bad hombres. They have no willing to improve the company. They're just here for hours, and when they have to work on the weekend, if they're unsupervised, they just do what they need to do. So that's why I'm kind of at this hallmark of working at this company, and they're going to move offices again, which I don't want to move. At this point, if I move, I'm moving to Florida. That's it, not California. So I'm going to take another brief pause and we'll look at the tail closely, see how he designed it. Okay, so now to put these guys in a regular box. So what did he do? He used a rubbery compound, which is a sort of a faux glue together. And if this was a movie prop, this would actually look pretty cool on camera, actually. I would not doubt movie props, you have a little bit of a leeway. The fur is nice. I do like the fur. It's got this nice feel to it. But the rubber is definitely something that I probably would not have recommended just using. Just use cloth instead. Because cloth doesn't react with stuff as bad. And because this is probably rubbery made, is painted on, assuming that the paint he used doesn't react with the rubber. It's one big caution. If you ever use latex paint, use latex rubber with it. They do have a different sense because being as old as I am, back in 2008-9, I used to buy really cool fleshy looking tails that I used to go out with Halloween with. So I had this feel and I knew what they are. They ended up in a box. Although after my water damage, I think some of them got eaten up by the mold. And mold keeps growing even after you dry stuff up. So don't expect anything to last forever because of that. So just last night I had, they made these gargoyle decorative / advertising for Coors Light, which is your beer company. And the coolest thing about them is they light up. So they were gargoyle, but they're kind of an inflatable. So they actually have the cutout, and you can see how they have it. And, when I was small, I was always mesmerized how you can make something this thin, all puffy, and has that feel to it where you can squeeze it. And we call it squeaks, by the way, which I'm not liked in that community apparently. But due to my history, I kind of pop up in all the newer groups of people. So that one has a light in it and has a little thing that you stick down his back, and it's got like a little pocket. It goes and lights up the whole product from the side. So I've made and that was one of the earlier ones I've seen. I would say probably around 2008 or 9, right before the crash, because I had a garage space I worked out of. So, and that was like I'd hang out in the garage and try to get some stuff done to stay outside of family issues. So I'd do my own thing. My ears wouldn't be as ringing, but I would remember it get quiet in the garage, and I would just hear sometimes the sprinkling of the water and things like that. So, but I did remember a lot of that stuff that one of the things I had learned was certain things react with each other. I had an eraser that was sitting on top of a pencil. No, it's an eraser with a one of those art erasers, and it was what do you call it? One of those pin drives sitting on top of it. And a year later, that thing melted right into it. And I'm like, wow, the plasticizer will react just by touching. So you start learning that stuff. And when I bought lots of rubbery wings and stuff, they weren't terribly expensive. I'll say back in 2008, they were probably about a $50 to $150 budget to get some of that costume stuff. So they weren't as expensive as something like this, but at the same time, um, that was a luxury item back in the day. And those of us who worked 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and things, we saved up and had a good family that did provide a lot of the resources. It wasn't until later those years that I started getting charged with this other thing called rent, taxes, and other stuff. I started to realize, but it didn't stop me because I had a decent job and traveled a bit and didn't really. I'm a maker, so at the time I was making electronic stuff. Sometimes here on this video I might pop up with a old custom DVR, but I think it left me with some guys at the paranormal group that long left. I'm assuming they tossed it because it had a nice Pelican case. Everything was built inside of it. I used to cut up the metal pieces in the garage, drill press the holes, make the holes, bolt them in, make the holes, bolt them in. So I did a lot of that fine stuff, and it really helped my psyche to keep my mind off of the world. But the world, my family was paying more attention to me. But since they couldn't change the world, what they did is they changed their lifestyle. They became from middle class up to the investment class. So they figured, oh, we need to move. My business is doing the same thing. We're buying a bunch of other stuff. I'm getting to the point where I don't want to move because I'm not growing. So even with my skills and some of the skills that I still don't know, that's why I'm hoping to find people who can make stuff like this, just less rubber, please. I mean, I do appreciate if it's rubber and probably filled with air. I have a few tails made in that passion. I'm pretty sure it'll disintegrate in about another 2 more years. I think it was made in like 2021 or 2. So they generally start to disintegrate. So I've got some heads. I'll probably film some stuff in my household before they go. And I've got some other projects that I'm just letting go because a good person says it's maybe time to just let stuff go. And if I do let stuff go, the only thing I have is memories and histories. But if I don't have a house and a place or a museum, that I can be me, it's kind of pointless to let anything go. And if someone offers me good money, I will definitely quote them, but I will now require an earnest deposit because I am not doing BS type work. And the guy that worked with me on this, or gal, I don't know, doesn't matter to me really, the person who worked on it, sold me at the beginning, sold me the price tag, said he was able to follow my documentation, and then everything that was sent to me from the paperwork and stuff looked very professional, but in this date and time, so does AI. So that's why it's time to put a stance on a lot of the stuff, because the true artists and makers are out there. It's not that I don't support them with going to AI. AI increases productivity, while the artist and maker never did increase productivity, but they increased their product. So as time progressed, their products got better, and they took out things that didn't work, like putting zippers into tails. And no one does that because why would you ever need a zipper to unstuff a tail? See, and I'm like, well, because I like to modify stuff. So if you don't want to put a zipper, that's fine. I'll just take a scissor and cut a hole and then install my own zipper at this point. I'm at a point now where I gave up trying to make life easy for me for the extra costs I pay, to where why don't I just go buy a $5 tail, cut it open, flip it inside out, see what I can do to stick lights or whatever in there, put it in there, it looks cute, and most people qualify for that. Why do 110%? Because unless you're mass producing, you're just showing off really at this point. So yes, there's a binary clock, and I did do 110% last year. I kind of regret doing it, it's around the time I lost my hearing. I decided to take on the course of taking a binary clock, hooking up to a driver with an ESP32 to drive the display. So writing the code was pretty easy. The refresh rates are there. You can kind of sometimes see a jump from time to time, but it works as a clock. It does read off the network time, so it's actually a very accurate clock compared to the other ones. which should have been accurate as long as you don't have inverters and generators in your circuit, because the synchronized 60 hertz across the US was well in sync because TVs and a lot of systems depended on there. So they scrubbed the AC wave to create a phase sync. Now, because everything is own clock crystal, buffer data, logic, and sometimes frame skipping, neat little tricks we do in the software to make things that wasn't there and delete things that was there so average users don't see it. We don't run into that problem. But when you work in the communications tech, and I really should make more videos on this, communications tech has a whole line of coverage. It may not cover computers, it may not cover art, but it does configure radios, which is our previous guy. So that's why I love meeting those guys. And even though Squeaks have banned me, radio furs, music furs, which I'm more than happy. They know my background, even car furs. Now people are telling me, oh, you're the bad hombre and all. It's the bad hombre portrays to people who take advantage of the system, come by on the weekends, break into our office, and even if they just wanted something as pencil and some resources, more than likely just use the code, log in, go through the equipment that we have set up here, do it the right way, grab what you need and go. Most of us don't even care if you took pencils, coffee, or any of that stuff, because those are consumables. That's what they're there for. They're to be consumed. See? What thing we are annoyed at is you being anonymous, hiding from the cameras, blocking cameras down. It's like, if you're doing nothing illegal, you've got nothing to hide, except for fucking illegals. And that's why they do that. They don't want to be on camera. They don't want to be there. Tough. I'm putting in AI now to monitor cameras, because I can't monitor 100 cameras. We can't. We have storage space. I've got to meet some requirements, build systems, talk to the right vendor. If there's new problems involved, I might just tear it down and do something more simpler. Like I said, there's always a lot of things to do in the tech world, but there's only so much you can manage. When you get to a certain point in life, things like this is going to be the last thing I'm worried about now, because I do love the fact that he created a nice looking monkey tail, and it looks pretty strong because it's sewn back here. It has a backing, so I'm going to assume that this has got that nice stronger texture to it. The red one is definitely one I will wear at next meetup, because it's actually kind of cool looking actually, for the rubber to it. But other than that, I just can't deal with people now anymore. I'm just at the point where what's being a show off? I mean, E3, if you manage to be a CEO for a big company and you got enough backing that all of a sudden you turned heads as a showstopper. Orbitz did that with the community I work with, because pushing things to the limit and having the right people is definitely a way to go. But right now, we have too much of the wrong people, and they fuck stuff up so bad that I'm to the point where I gave up. I'm not doing it anymore, and until I moved to Florida, where people respect hard work, working people. Texas too. So anyhow, I'm going to call it, because it's now 38 minutes long, this recording. It'll be uploaded, so good night, everyone.